Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us. We'll start in about 4 minutes. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Today's subject is resolving common problem behaviors in dogs and cats. Our presenter today is Kelley Bollen, MSc-ABC. She is a certified animal behavior consultant with a master's degree in animal behavior who has worked in the field of companion animals for 20 years. Kelley is the owner and principal consultant for Kelley Bollen Consulting, an animal behavior consulting business. She consults with animal shelters across the country on the design and implementation of comprehensive behavior programs to improve the welfare of animals. Kelley also provides educational seminars to veterinary professionals, the animal welfare community, and the pet owning public. Kelley is the former director of behavior programs for the Maddie Shelter Medicine Program at Cornell University College of Veterinary Medicine, where she taught shelter medicine residents and interns, as well as veterinary students, about behavior as it relates to the shelter environment. In her previous position as the behavior manager for the Massachusetts SPCA, Kelley conducted published research on shelter dog behavior evaluations. She is an author of chapters and articles related to animal behavior and is an invited speaker at multiple national conferences. We welcome Kelley.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you everybody for joining us this morning. Well, it's morning here for me. I'm in Nevada. I know it's afternoon for some of you folks. I'm glad you joined us today to talk about resolving common problem behaviors in dogs and cats. And before I start, I just want to thank Assisi Animal Health for having me, asking me to speak today. I'm really excited to start working with this amazing group. And I just want to say how excited I am also about their newest product, the Canine Calmer, or Calmer Canine, which I'm really excited to also bring to the shelter world. So if you don't know anything about the Calmer Canine, please do check it out. But let's go ahead and get started with our presentation. Because we know that behavior problems are the #1 reason for owner relinquishment to the shelter. Okay, and so it's really important that we understand how to help people who are experiencing behavior problems with their dogs and cats to try to prevent relinquishment. Because when people get really frustrated with their animal, oftentimes they feel like they just don't have any other options, and then off to the shelter the animal goes. And so it's always important for you, the shelter folks out there, to educate yourself on how to help people. You know, when they call you up or they come in and say, oh, I'm having this problem with my dog or my cat. So that's why I wanted to give this talk today. Now, the thing is that a lot of problem behaviors, and I say problem behaviors, not behavior problems. It seems a little semantic, but the thing is a lot of problem behaviors that dog owners have issue with are just normal dog behaviors that they just don't understand or appreciate. And so they're not really behavior problems per se, like the dog has a terrible problem. It's just a behavior that is problematic for the owner. Right? So things like barking and digging and chewing and chasing things and eating poop and rolling in stinky stuff, all that stuff comes naturally to dogs, even though it's all really super annoying to us humans, right? We have to remember that dogs are dogs. They're not furry little people. No matter how much we dress them up and treat them like our children, they're dogs, and they're gonna do doggy things. So let's start with that behavior problem that a lot of people have, barking. The thing about barking in dogs is that it is normal dog behavior. It's one of the ways that dogs communicate, right? They obviously don't have a verbal language. They communicate with barking. And there's a lot of reasons why dogs bark. They bark to get attention. They bark when they're bored or when they're lonely or when they're frustrated. They bark when they're excited. They bark when they hear other dogs bark. That's called social facilitation. One dog barks, the others join in. They bark when they're guarding their territory. They bark when they respond to any kind of stimulus, like a noise that they hear. So tons of reasons why dogs bark. So when somebody comes to you and says, I need help, my dog is barking and I'm going to get kicked out of my apartment, and if I can't resolve this problem, I'm going to have to bring the dog down to the shelter. The first thing we need to recognize is that there's all those different reasons why dogs bark, and we have to try to figure out why this particular dog is barking, because resolving the problem depends on knowing what the trigger for the barking is. So let's go through them. Attention-seeking barking. So how do you deal with attention-seeking barking? If the person says, oh, he barks at me just so I can, give him some attention or let him outside or whatever. Well, the way we deal with this kind of barking is to just have the attention go away, because dogs learn through the consequence of their behavior. And so if the barking works to get attention, and remember, even negative attention to a dog who's seeking attention is still rewarding. So we want the opposite to happen. So when the dog barks at somebody for attention, that person should just turn and walk away and lock themselves in the bathroom. Pretty soon, dogs are trial and error learners, and pretty soon the dog is going to realize, when I bark, she leaves. Okay, that's not working for me anymore. And so then the dog might try something else. Okay, and so we hope that something else is not as annoying as barking. What about dogs that are barking because they're bored? Well, quite frankly, it's easy. Give them something to do. A lot of dog behavior problems stem from the fact that dogs are bored, right? They just do not have enough to do in their lives. So give them something to do. What about those dogs that bark because they're excited, right? So you take out that leash and the dog starts barking and jumping, so excited to go out for a walk. Well, the way we resolve that one is to ignore the dog until the dog calms down. So you pick up that leash, the dog starts barking, going crazy, you put the leash down, turn your back. Right? Dog shuts up, you pick up the leash, dog starts barking, you put the leash down, turn your back. And pretty soon the dog is going to realize, hey, what's going on here? I'm not going outside. And as soon as that dog realizes, let me try being quiet, leash goes on, go for a walk. So it's about the consequence of the behavior. What about dogs that bark because they're lonely? Well, you got to do something about that. You know, maybe you can afford to bring a pet sitter in halfway through the day to walk the dog. But if you can't, you know, putting a radio on can be very helpful. I like to just have like NPR on because it's news half the day, someone talking, and classical music the rest of the day. And so since dogs can't understand what's going on in the news, they won't be as distressed by it as we are. You know, people ask me all the time, what about getting a friend? Yeah, why don't you get a friend? If you don't want another dog, maybe a cat could be a nice partner for your lonely dog. What about dogs that are barking out of frustration? Well, again, the thing is we got to tell these pet owners that they have to remove the cause of the frustration. If the dog is chained out to a dog house or just put out on a runner and the dog is barking, barking, barking all day out of frustration and the neighbors are complaining, then you can't just have that dog tied out like that. But, you know, even dogs that are inside and kept in a crate all day can bark out of frustration from being in a crate. Now, I believe in crate training. It's a wonderful aid to house training puppies. But really, once a dog is an adult, the dog shouldn't have to be in a crate all day. So a dog that's in a crate for 8-10 hours a day is going to get frustrated and bored, and barking might ensue. What about the dogs that bark at any kind of stimulus they hear? The door knock, the doorbell, a siren, another dog barking. How do we deal with those dogs that are responding to some stimulus? Well, what I like to do is teach people how to teach their dog a quiet command. So a quiet command is like an off switch. So since barking is normal dog behavior, it's nice to say, well, thanks for letting me know there's someone at the door. Now be quiet. Now, the mistake people make is the dog's barking and they start yelling quiet. Well, the dog doesn't know what the word quiet means. And so what all the dog knows is that you're just joining in with the barking. And so we have to be able to teach people how to teach their dog how to be quiet on cue. So how do we teach a quiet command? Well, when the dog is barking, we show him a treat, right? Put it right up to his nose. And the dog will stop barking because he wants the treat. And when he stops barking, we say quiet, and then we give him the treat. We want to pair the word quiet with the action of shutting up, because that's how dogs learn words, through association. Okay, and then we repeat this until the dog understands that quiet means shutting up. And then we can use quiet to stop the barking. So dog barks at something outside, you know, you can then say, okay, quiet, and the dog stops. Now we want to reward the dog for being quiet at first every time. And then once he's got the idea, then you can reward randomly. Reward with the treat, that is. Always say good boy. Okay, the next behavior problem that we hear about all the time is digging. And the thing about digging is also normal dog behavior. And there's lots of reasons why dogs bark or dig. So for some dogs, digging is an innate behavior, like the terriers are going to dig because it's just innate behavior. Some dogs dig because they're bored. Some dig to get cool in a hot day. Some dig to try to escape the yard. And some dig to bury something or dig up something they buried last week. But for a lot of dogs, digging is just fun behavior. It's just normal dog behavior. So let's talk about how to deal with the digger. Oh, hold on. Okay, so advice for the digger. First of all, don't leave the dog outside unattended for long periods of time, because then they're going to be bored out there and they're going to start digging. But my best advice for digging dogs is to recognize the dog's need to dig and give him his own digging pit. So bring in some play sand, put it in an area, bury some milk bones, some toys, and encourage the dog to dig in that area. So now that desire to dig is okay. It's legal in this area. It's really the best way to deal with the digging dog. Give him a place to dig. And then you can booby trap the forbidden areas, the vegetable garden, the perennial garden. These are two products that are really good at that. The garden ghost is just a motion detector on a can of compressed air that spritzes out air. And the scarecrow is a motion detector on the end of a hose. Okay, so we can give him his own digging pit and then deter him from digging where you don't want him to. Okay, the next behavior problem we often hear about is chewing. And again, chewing is normal dog behavior. And dogs need to chew when they're bored or when they're stressed. And basically, chewing is just fun for dogs. And so chewing is just normal dog behavior, but they can get into trouble when they chew things they're not supposed to chew. And so how do we deal with the destructive chewer? Yeah, we'd look at this picture and say, oh my goodness. Now, this dog certainly could have severe separation anxiety, but let's assume he doesn't, that he just had a blast chewing up this chair. Yikes, right? Okay, so how do we deal with the chewing dog? Well, first of all, you want to make sure you provide the dog with plenty of appropriate chew items and reward him or her for using them. So you have to have things that the dog is allowed to chew on because they're going to chew. Okay, now the other thing that's really super important is to rotate those toys because variety and novelty are key. If the same 3 toys are sitting on the rug for 3-4 weeks, pretty soon they blend into the rug for the dog. They get bored of them. And then your shoe, whoa, that's so interesting and cool. Think of all the smells around your shoe. That becomes the object of chewing. So I tell people to get like 20 chew items and you put 5 out a day and switch them every single day. So you're rotating those. And if the dog gets bored of his toys, you can always soak them for a couple hours in chicken broth and let them dry on the counter and then give it to them. And it's all refreshed and new. And the dog is going to be super interested in that chew item. And then once you provide those appropriate chew items, you keep them interesting and you rotate them, you can try to booby trap some inappropriate items. Now, if they're chewing on the table leg or the woodwork of the door, you can use these bitter tasting sprays, bitter apple and fooey. The idea is that the environment itself punishes the dog. Dog goes to chew on the table leg and, ugh, that tastes awful. So never spray this stuff on your own shoe, however, because if you get it in your mouth, it tastes awful to us as well. Now, if you can't supervise and your dog is a chewer, you can crate train your dog. Even an adult dog can be crate trained. But you notice that this crate picture I put up, this dog has plenty of room. He's got his bed and his toys and room to move around. He's in front of a window. You can watch out. To crate a big dog in a little crate and give him nothing to do is really not that great for the dog. But if you crate train them well and give them plenty of room, that's a good way to handle dogs that are chewers when you're not home. Another behavior problem that we see in dogs is chasing small things. And, dogs naturally chase critters because they're the descendants of wolves, and many of them retain predatory instincts. And most of the time, the squirrel outsmarts the dog, but the dog still chases the squirrel. So what's some advice for these predatory dogs that like to chase other furry animals? Well, management is really the best thing because this is a hardwired behavior, which means it's in the dog's brain and we really can't get it out. So if your dog is predatory to small animals, keep him on a leash when you're walking to make sure he doesn't get hit by a car. If he chases the squirrels in the yard, 99.9% of the time, the squirrel's going to get away, and maybe that's okay. But you can't really stop a dog from chasing if that's what's in his brain. Now, rolling in stinky stuff is normal dog behavior. Now, there's 2 theories about why dogs do this. The first one is that they actually just like the smell of whatever it is they're rolling in, so it's like doggy perfume. The other theory is that this is an ancestral leftover trait from the wolves because wolves will roll in stinky stuff before they go for a hunt to cover their own scent. Now, for our dogs, it could be one or both, or one or the other, or both. Who knows? But they certainly do seem to enjoy it. So the advice for the rollers, you got to keep your dog on a leash if he tends to roll, or if you have an off-leash dog, you want to teach him a really good leave it and a really solid recall, come when called. So you see him interested in something and before he rolls in it, leave it, come. So you've got to teach those behaviors. Now, let's talk about dogs eating poop. Actually, eating poop is normal dog behavior, even though we find it super disgusting. To me, I look at this and I say, oh, the dog found the Tootsie Roll, the fish flavored Tootsie Roll cafe, right? So let's talk about why dogs eat poop. Well, first and foremost is because dogs are scavengers, and scavengers are opportunistic feeders. They're going to eat stuff that's food. And to a scavenger, feces contains undigested food material that a dog with its 300 million scent receptors can smell. So quite frankly, poop is just food to a dog. So in fact, the scavenging nature of dogs leads to other behavior problems like garbage raiding and counter surfing. Okay, so what are some advice for those poop eaters? Well, if the dog's eating his own poop, not only do you want to get a medical exam, but you can add some things to their food to render their poop distasteful when it comes out. Meat tenderizer, pineapple juice, there's a couple of products on the market designed for this purpose. But if the dog is eating other animals' feces, we want to make sure we clean up that yard. We want to make sure we prevent access to that kitty litter box and walk the dog on a leash, because quite frankly, that's just the best way, is management. Now, the advice for the scavenging dog who is a garbage raider or a counter surfer is going to be funny to you. My advice is, let's use our big giant human brain and outsmart the dog. Let's put the trash can behind a door that he can't get to it, and let's not leave food on the counter. All right, so then we don't tempt the dog to do what comes natural, scavenging. And so let's use that big brain. Now, some other common complaints we hear about dogs: jumping up and pulling. So let's talk about those. Why do dogs jump up? Well, mainly because your face is way up there and they're excited to greet you, right? And also because we reinforce jumping, whether we know it or not, and if it's inadvertent or not. And we never taught the dog what to do instead. So let's talk about advice for the jumping dog. Number one, make your greetings low key. Number two, never reinforce the jumping. Don't give it any attention. In fact, the best way to handle jumping is to make it chase you away, just like I said with attention-seeking barking. Dog jumps, turn and walk away. And then teach the dog an appropriate greeting, which is a sit. What about pulling? Why do dogs pull on their leash? Well, they pull on their leash because they're excited to go for a walk. They pull because they have what we call opposition reflex, and they pull because they haven't been taught not to pull. And so advice for that puller, we want to teach loose leash walking, which means walk forward only if there's no tension on the leash. When the dog pulls, just stop and wait for him to slacken the leash before you walk again. Okay, and then randomly reward the dog with special treats when he's not pulling. Okay, the tools that can help for a pulling dog, I like the front clasping harnesses, because when the dog puts tension in the leash and the person the tension pulls that dog sideways because of the front clasper, and then he's going to slacken that leash better. The tools we want to avoid, the back clasping harnesses, and the tools that could cause pain, the choke collar and the pinch collar. We don't need those tools when there are other more humane tools available. So the more you know, the more you can help dog owners, and the fewer dogs will be surrendered. Now let's talk about a couple of behavior problems in cats that people struggle with. Now, the most common problem in cats is inappropriate elimination. Okay, so when someone comes to you with their cat is not using the litter box, the most important thing to do is tell them to get a veterinary exam, because there are a lot of health problems that can lead to inappropriate elimination. So you have to rule those things out first. Okay, but if there are no medical issues, then it's time to think like a cat, and you got to answer a bunch of questions. You got to ask the pet owner a lot of these questions. We start with the litter box questions, because cats can stop using their box when there's something about the litter or the box that's problematic to the cat, remember. So signs that it could be the litter itself. They eliminate right next to the box. They go up to it, but they won't go in it, or they perch on the side to eliminate, or they don't bury their waste, or they shake their feet violently after they're done using the box. That tells you something about the litter. So first question, what kind of litter do you use? There's probably 3 dozen kinds of litter on the market. Only probably 2 of them are designed for the cat. The rest are designed for humans, because weird smells and textures can deter a cat from using the litter. So we got to find out what kind of litter they use. Has the litter changed? Cats are very habitual animals and they do not like change. So if the owner just bought a new litter because it was on sale, that's probably going to be the problem. Go back to the litter that worked. How deep is the litter? Cats prefer litter that's about 2 to 3 inches deep. They want enough in there that they can spread it around and bury their waste, but they don't want so much that they feel like they're sinking in quicksand. So you want to have that happy median. The cat's preference for litter is soft, clumping, unscented litter. All right, now the next questions are about the actual box itself. Right? Is the box too small, which oftentimes is the problem. Cats like to have room to do their business. They want to pee over here and poop over here. They want to be able to bury it. When the box is too small, we often have problems with the litter box. I always recommend for people who are having problems with their cat using the box, a giant supersized litter box, like one of those clothing containers rather than a standard litter box. Then the cat's got plenty of room to use that box. Is the box covered? Imagine what it smells like in there. You can imagine it. You know how you feel when you're gearing up to try to go into one of these when you really have to. When it's enclosed, it's going to trap the odor. And so a lot of cats just can't stand going in because it's just too stinky. Are there litter box liners used? Now, liners are good for people, but they're not so good for cats. Number one, they smell funny. And number two, when they're burying their waste, if they get their nail caught in that liner, they could then, stop using the box because it's a negative experience with the box. So if they're using liners, get rid of the liner. How often is the box cleaned? A really important question because cats are super fastidious animals and they do not like a dirty box. Okay, so the boxes have to be scooped every day and the litter should be changed at least once a week because stuff gets left over. What's used to clean the box? So once they empty that box, a lot of people will actually diligently clean the box, but if they're using regular household cleaners, those smells can be aversive to cats. What I recommend is using just mild dish soap or the enzymatic cleaner anti-icky poo, which is my favorite, or another product called Zero Odor. These are products that I have found over the years work really well. How old is the box itself? What we don't think about, even you take this box and you clean it all out with your mild dish soap, and look how there's still urine trapped within the layers of the plastic. When a cat scratches, it scratches the surface of the plastic and then urine can get in there. So I suggest people replace their box once a year. Remember that cats have way better smelling than we do. So we have 6 million scent receptors, but a cat has 80 million scent receptors. So we think it smells okay, but the cat doesn't. How many boxes for how many cats? So if you have multiple cats, you have to have multiple boxes and they should be in multiple locations. Okay, the rule of thumb is 1 box per cat plus 1. So if you have 3 cats, you should have 4 boxes. Now, ideally, these boxes are spread out around the house. This situation is not ideal because it's 1 toilet area. And even though the picture shows 2 cats pooping or peeing side by side, most cats don't want to do that. Where's the box located? Sometimes it's down in the basement, too isolated next to the oil drum. Sometimes it's too exposed where everybody was walking around all the time. Or it's next to the white monsters, what I call the white monsters. If the cat is in a box and the dryer buzzes or the washer goes to spin cycle, that's going to scare the cat. Negative experience in the box could deter the cat from using the box. Is the cat being ambushed or harassed in the box? So oftentimes this can happen and the cat decides, you know what, I'm just going to go somewhere else. So the cat's preference for their box is a private location with easy access and plenty of visibility. Now, sometimes cats can develop a surface preference. So they stop using their box for whatever reason, and then they start using something else that they say, I actually like this surface better, whether it's a bedding or laundry or newspaper or even a cold porcelain sink or tub. Other cats can develop a location preference, a location that serves them better, gives them more visibility or more privacy. So first thing we need to do is treat the soiled areas. So you can find the urine with a black light, and then you want to remove all the odor. You got to get rid of that olfactory cue with some of these products like anti-icky poo or Zero Odor. You can change the significance of the area. Once you neutralize the odor, you can put the cat's bowl there or leave treats there or put their bed there or play with them there. They don't like to do those things where they pee and poop. Or you can try to deter the cat from going there. Again, once you've neutralized the odor, by putting something that's aversive to the cat there, like a scent or a texture. I like the carpet runner with those nubbies, and you put nubby side up. Cat won't want to walk on those. Some people like to use these deterrents like a squirt gun or a penny can, but all that teaches the cat is when you're standing there with a squirt gun, don't do anything bad. So some of these remote motion control deterrents can be helpful. The scat that shoots out compressed air, or the tattletale that sets off an alarm. For surface preference cats, if we want to get them back into the box, we can find a surface that's like the surface that they've learned to prefer, put it in the box. Once the cat's using the box, we can slowly add litter back in. And hopefully then we don't have to use that towel or whatever we used for very long. For location preference cats, we want to put the box where the cat wants to pee. And then once they're using the box, we can slowly move that box inch by inch to a more appropriate location. And there's our products that can draw a cat back to their box too. Again, once we've dealt with all of these issues, the cat attract is a good one. Some of the litters these days have natural herbal attractants in them. The last thing we're going to talk about real quickly is destructive scratching. Okay, and again, scratching is normal cat behavior. It's one of the ways they get rid of it is the way they get rid of those dead nail sheaths. They also mark their territory by scratching, and they like to stretch out their muscles when they scratch. So it's normal cat behavior. So we must provide cats with a proper scratching post because they're going to do it. And if you don't give them the scratching post, they're going to do it on the furniture. Now, location is really super important because if the cat's scratching on the couch, the litter box or the scratching post has to be by the couch, okay? Because that's where the cat wants to mark its territory. The substrates, there's plenty of different kinds of substrates, and I find that cats like the sisal rope kind. That's these ones. The corrugated cardboard, a lot of cats like these, and they're fairly inexpensive. I have several of these around my house. The non-loop carpeted ones are great. Now, the loop carpeting can be problematic because the cat's scratching and he gets his nail caught in the loop and he gets stuck. That's a negative experience with the post, and he'll stop using it. But a lot of cats just prefer natural wood. So you can just grab a log from the log pile and bring it in the house. Now, it might cause a little bit more of a mess, but it sure will save your furniture. A variety of orientations is good. Some cats like vertical, some like horizontal, some like them slanted. Giving them a variety is a great way to make sure they use those scratching posts. Make sure the vertical ones are tall and stable because you don't want it to knock down when the cat is really trying to stretch out. So you want it tall and stable. And then you can discourage furniture use using a couple different ways. You can use texture aversion, like this person put aluminum foil all over their couch. Hopefully it's COVID and they don't have any company. You can use smell aversion because these are the scents that cats don't particularly like. You can make a little sachet and hang it on the couch. Or you can use that startle technique using those motion detectors to keep the cat away from the furniture and try to hopefully get them to use their scratching post. And a manicure is really nice. You know, teach the owner how to just take that little sharp tip off the cat's nails every 2 or 3 weeks so that they don't do so much damage if they do happen to make a mistake and use the couch one day. But having those scratching posts are really important. So the more you know, the more you can help cat owners, and the fewer cats will be surrendered to the shelter. Okay, so that's the end. And that was like a super fast talk for me because I'm not used to crunching a lot of stuff into a half an hour. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you learned a lot of advice that you can give people who are struggling with these particular behavior problems. There's part 2 down the road. This is my email and my website. And I welcome you to email me if you have any questions or anything after the session. And again, I want to thank Assisi Animal Health for having me come and talk to you today.